The Porsche Mission X has finally made its way into Gran Turismo 7, marking a continued and healthy partnership between the two brands. Unfortunately, despite the potential this electric vehicle has to offer, it's hard to experience it at its full potential due to some glaring in-game issues within GT7 itself. As a result, the car ends up being one of the most disappointing additions to the game, period. And in today's video, I'll deep dive into exactly why this is and what could have been a seriously exciting addition to Gran Turismo's roster. So first of all, let's talk about the price point and the specs. Now there's really not much given away here about the car. We know it costs 1 million credits, comes in a single colour called Rocket Metallic, which I do actually really like, and we can see that in terms of the styling. It takes some obvious inspiration from the recent WEC campaigns. However, we don't really know much else about this car. It has a relatively high performance point rating, runs on sports softs unfortunately, more on that later, has 1341 brake horsepower, is EV or electric vehicle, an RR layout, and we don't really know much more about it. Overall, it's a bit of a mystery, so let's begin then with the future and what this car represents for the Porsche brand. The Porsche Mission X is an electric concept sports car first unveiled in June of 2023. It's set to become the successor to the legendary Porsche 918 Spider when it hits production in 2025, or next year. Porsche has ambitious goals for this car, including a 1:1 power to weight ratio and the aim for it to set the record for the fastest road legal car around the Nürburgring Nordschleife. The car itself is a clear statement piece from Porsche. Of course, it's there to replace one of their most beloved recent vehicles in the 918, or maybe one of their most beloved vehicles of all time, and on paper, the stats are there for it to be incredibly quick, with the clear goals being targeted. It's very obvious to see where the Mission X fits into Porsche's lineup. If we look back at the history of it, then of course we have the likes of the Carrera GT with that beautiful screaming engine note, and then of course following that we had the 918, which was of course hybrid, but very much sat in the holy trinity of hypercars alongside the McLaren P1 and of course the LaFerrari. So really, they are proven and time-tested cars that many people talk about even today. And then of course we have the Mission X as the successor to the 918. And unfortunately, I don't think it will be anywhere near as cherished or loved as the previous two. The Mission X has huge boots to fill, and unfortunately I feel if Porsche are set in their ways that this is going to be an EV replacement for the 918, that unfortunately it will just never hit the highs of the previous two really extreme road-going Porsches. Do I think the Stuttgart brand is going to go ahead and achieve those goals with this car? Absolutely. There's no denying it. They know what they're doing, but unfortunately, regardless, I don't think it will quite be the replacement they expect. So let's talk about in-game next then, and this is where the key issues with this car really come into play. Now a lot of these huge issues are down to the car itself, and you'll probably notice those as soon as you try and step on that accelerator, but I'll go more into detail with that later on. However, a lot of the issues are down to the way GT7 itself is actually laid out. So let's begin then with customization. If you were expecting anything other than a few wheel changes, then you are probably going to be incredibly disappointed at this point. As typical with a lot of these real world concept vehicles, there's absolutely nothing to change apart from wheels and tyres, and really that's your lot from both the performance side of things and the kind of more body modification part of the game. So customization is a huge weak point for this car, but that's really to be expected. So now it's time to talk about what really went wrong with this car, and whilst it might be one of the most disappointing post-launch cars to Gran Turismo 7 period. So of course the Mission X is a true powerhouse with over 1300 horsepower. It should be an absolute monster on the track. However, the handling in GT7 is a major letdown. One of the main reasons for this is the tyre compound used on the car, which is sports softs. Whilst of course the Mission X in real world is absolutely a track weapon considering what Porsche are attempting to do with this thing, unfortunately in GT7 it's the opposite. It struggles with traction, particularly because of those default sports tyres. This leads to inconsistent handling, making it difficult to put all that 1300 brake horsepower down on the road without the car spinning out or losing grip. While switching to racing tyres can slightly improve the situation, it's not a perfect fix. The car still struggles with putting power to the ground, which detracts from the driving experience. And to make matters worse, using in-game assist to mitigate the issue will not work. It will just bog the car down and take away a bunch of its true performance. Another huge issue is the car's weight itself. As an electric vehicle, the Mission X is incredibly heavy, and unfortunately the brakes in GT7 simply can't keep up. Players will find themselves hitting the brakes too early and spending too much time on them just to slow the car down. This takes away from the thrill of the drive, as it requires drivers to constantly adjust their throttle and brake input for stability. In short, the car doesn't feel as exciting as it should, and this was made glaringly obvious if you took part in the Red Bull Ring time trial, where you spent more time off the throttle and on the brakes than you actually did driving it. Another key issue is how GT7 itself is handled, and that is going to be usability. There's just nowhere to use this. I took it around an 800 pp race in which I did have to detune the car, and unfortunately it ran out of fuel inside 2 laps, or electric charge should I say. Of course, this isn't just an issue for this EV itself, however it is a key issue across the board for pretty much all of them. It's made worse by the fact that this is a concept type vehicle that has limited customization or tuning potential, meaning that you can't even downgrade it or upgrade it to really find a true place to run in game for more than 5 minutes at a time. And well, to make the situation even worse, it cannot even run in its own true event, which is of course the Porsche Cup, in which the car just cannot enter. It's a real shame, and it shows some glaring key issues within GT7 itself. Really, a proper issue with a lot of these EVs is they enter the game and leave even quicker than they actually entered, apart from maybe a 2-week long online time trial in which they'll be featured, and then everybody will just forget about it. Now honestly, in some of these electric vehicles, although I am absolutely a purist, there is some true potential to have some decent fun there, and the Mission X could have been one. Despite its driving flaws, it could have had a one-make championship, or it could have had a, hypercar electric vehicle championship, just something to cater to these type of vehicles in game, which cost a lot of credits and get around about 5 minutes use by most players. So really, there's a real easy fix for this. Honestly, if Polyphony Digital simply acknowledged the unique nature of EVs in the game, by doing this, they could open up more opportunities for these cars, making them more relevant and valuable to the player base. This would also help mitigate the backlash every time a new EV is added to the game. Currently, yes, there is a lot of people out there that won't like EVs because it's not the pure way, and I guess I'm in that group as well. I'm not a huge fan of these cars, but of course there is a lot of them around these days, and again, a lot of these big manufacturers are kind of pushing them. So if we have to have them in game, at least make them exciting and relevant to the player base to avoid as much backlash. If people were getting more than 5 to 10 minutes with these things every single time we saw one, then really there wouldn't be as much of a huge overblown issue. But at present, because Polyphony refused to make these cars actually have some use in game, the same issue persists with them. It's such a simple solution for what's been one of GT7's biggest criticisms, that a lot of cars, not just EVs I might add, have been incredibly useless just due to the fact that GT7 just seems to be laid out all wrong, with certain cars having nowhere to cater for them. Again, Polyphony just need to get on top of this, and a lot of the criticisms for these vehicles will be entirely gone. Look, Polyphony, if you're struggling for ideas, just go ahead and hit me up and I'm sure I'll help you guys out if I need so. So in the end then, the combination of issues with both the car itself and GT7's handling of electric vehicles makes the Porsche Mission X a forgettable addition. It's a real shame because the car has so much potential in the real world and is incredibly exciting on paper. However, the way it's presented in GT7 fails to do it justice, and it's hard not to feel disappointment by what could have been a truly thrilling ride. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. Big thank you to all of my members on screen now. I will see you later. Take care guys. Peace.